Ever get caught in one of those sudden downpours lately and find your basement suddenly an indoor swimming pool?
Yeah, not a fun
Mhm.
experience. But, here's the thing. All these crazy weather events we're seeing more and more of, it's not just an inconvenience anymore. They're really starting to shake up entire industries.
Absolutely. And that's actually what we're going to be diving into today. We're looking at the restoration industry.
That's right. The skilled folks who come in after a fire flood or any kind of disaster, really, and put people's homes and businesses back together.
Mhm.
And the article we're going to be unpacking today comes from CARSI, the Cleaning and Restoration Science Institute. They're based in Australia, and they actually train these professionals, so they've got an interesting perspective on all this.
They do. And they're seeing a surge in demand, unlike anything in the past. Yeah, the article doesn't waste any time. It jumps right into how these natural disasters are becoming more frequent and way more intense. Hurricanes, floods, wildfires.
Everything.
Yeah, you name it.
And the insurance claims really tell the story, right?
Mm.
I mean, they've seen something like a 40% increase in flood-related claims just in the past year alone. Imagine the pressure that puts on these restoration companies to keep pace with all that.
40%. That's incredible. And it's not as simple as just mopping up some water and calling it a day, right? The article really gets into how much more complex these restoration projects are becoming.
Absolutely. It's a totally different game now. We're talking about severe water damage, the kind that can seep into the foundation of a building. You've got intense fire damage that's made even worse by these faster, hotter burning wildfires with climate change.
Like everything's dialed up to 11 now.
Exactly. And then there's the hidden threat that people don't always think about: mold. With all the humidity and moisture just hanging around after a flood,
Yeah.
their risk of dangerous mold growth goes way up. It's a huge health concern.
Which makes me think about the workers who are on the front lines of all this. Talk about a tough job. And the article brought up some serious health and safety risks that they face in this industry.
Yeah, for sure. It's a major concern. These are the people going into potentially hazardous situations. They're dealing with contaminated water damaged structures, all of it.
Hmm.
Rigorous safety protocols and specialized training are absolutely essential now more than ever.
And even the tools of the trade are changing, right?
Yeah.
They highlighted a couple of specific ones that are becoming really crucial, like thermal imaging cameras and moisture meters.
Those are total game changers. Imagine for a second, you're a restoration worker. You're stepping into a home that's been damaged by a flood.
Hmm.
You see the soaked furniture. The floors are warped. That's the obvious stuff, right? But what you don't see is the moisture trapped behind the walls.
Hmm.
And that can lead to a massive mold problem later if it's not addressed.
Okay, so let's unpack this thermal imaging thing a little bit, because I have to admit that one surprised me. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have thought of that.
It's really quite fascinating. Thermal imaging is like giving these professionals X-ray vision, but for water damage.
Yeah.
They can pinpoint exactly where that moisture is hiding, even if it's behind walls or under the floorboards.
So it's not just about fixing the visible damage, it's about protecting people's health in the long run. That's a whole other level of responsibility.
Exactly. And that's just one example. The article also talked about how this extreme heat from climate change is affecting building materials in ways that we are only just starting to really understand.
So the damage is more intense, it's more unpredictable.
Precisely.
Mm.
And that demands a higher level of expertise from these restoration professionals. They need to be up to date on the latest techniques, the most effective tools, and these safety protocols are constantly evolving, especially for these more extreme situations.
Which brings us to the bigger picture, I think. This isn't just about reacting to disasters as they happen, right? The article talks about this need for the entire industry to adapt proactively.
Absolutely. It's about anticipating the challenges that a changing climate is going to bring and evolving with it. And that's where continuous learning and technological advancements are key for anyone in this line of work.
Speaking of which, I found it really interesting that CARIS, the organization behind this article, they actually offer specialized training in climate adaptive restoration. They're really putting their money where their mouth is. So what exactly are they teaching in these programs?
Well, they're very focused on giving these restoration professionals the skills and the knowledge they need for this new landscape. They cover everything from advanced drying techniques for extreme water damage to how to identify and safely remediate mold in a changing climate. They even get into the nitty-gritty of how different building materials hold up to extreme heat and how to repair them properly or even when to replace them.
Wow, so they're basically training a whole new breed of restoration superheroes.
Well, the skills they're teaching are definitely becoming more and more important, that's for sure. And it's not just about the technical side of things either. CARSI also really emphasizes how important communication is. you know, making sure that homeowners understand these climate resilient building practices.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's also about empowering people to protect their own homes and businesses from future disasters. I like that.
Exactly. It's all connected.
Yeah.
Because if you have communities that are informed about the risks and they understand things like why flood proofing is important or using fire resistant materials in their homes, it can really make a huge difference in the long run. It can significantly reduce the impact of these events.
Yeah, it's like a collective effort. Everyone's playing their part to build a more resilient future. It's actually pretty inspiring when you think about it.
It is. It just shows how something like the restoration industry, which might seem kind of niche, is actually on the front lines of this much bigger issue. And those insights from the people who are actually out there doing the work can have a ripple effect on how we build, how we live, how we adapt to a changing world.
It makes me wonder what other industries could be going through these kinds of transformations because of climate change. What other ripple effects are we not even thinking about yet?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's something we should all be thinking about regardless of whether we're directly involved in these industries or not. Because the thing is, climate change is a universal disruptor. Its impact is going to be felt everywhere.
Right. It's not just about buildings and floodwater. It's really about the future of work itself. And maybe even spotting opportunities in places we wouldn't expect.
Exactly. It's about really understanding how the landscape is shifting and equipping ourselves with the knowledge and skills we'll need to navigate it successfully. And that's a conversation worth having.
Couldn't agree more. And on that note, we're going to take a quick break. But don't go anywhere because when we come back, we're going to delve even deeper into these potential career paths of the future. This is the deep dive, and you don't want to miss what's coming up next. Welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we were talking about how climate change is going to shake things up in fields like urban planning and agriculture.
It's like we're hitting the reset button on how we think about these industries. And with that reset comes a whole new set of skills and specializations that are going to be really valuable.
Yeah, like there's a whole career evolution happening right in front of us. What other fields do you think could see a major transformation?
Well, one area that comes to mind that's really interesting is disaster preparedness and risk management.
Okay.
As these extreme weather events become more common, businesses and governments, everyone really is going to need experts who can assess the risks, come up with emergency plans, make sure that they're ready for whatever's coming.
So instead of just reacting to these disasters after they happen, we're talking about getting ahead of the curve and trying to minimize the damage before it even starts.
Exactly. And it's not just about picking up the pieces afterward either. It's about building that resilience into everything we do, from infrastructure to supply chains to whole communities.
It sounds like that field would require a really interesting mix of skills. You'd have to understand the climate science, you need a risk assessment, emergency response, maybe even a little psychology thrown in there too.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's this emerging field that requires a really multidisciplinary approach. It's drawing on all these different areas of expertise, and that's something we're seeing more and more of as climate change reshapes the workforce. The lines between traditional industries are getting blurrier, and the people who can bridge those gaps are going to be in really high demand.
It's like the ultimate case for adaptability and always keep learning.
Absolutely. And it's not just about learning new technical skills. It's about critical thinking, problem solving, being able to adjust to new situations all the time.
Being comfortable with not knowing everything, being okay with a little uncertainty, maybe even being excited about the challenges and opportunities that come with that.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about getting through climate change. It's about thriving in spite of it.
Yep.
And that's something we can all work towards regardless of what we do.
I love that. And on that note of cautious optimism, we've reached the end of our deep dive into these surprising ways that climate change is impacting the workforce. We've explored the challenges, the opportunities, and maybe even sparked some ideas for those of you out there who are looking to make a difference.
It's been a fantastic conversation,
Yeah.
and I hope that it's encouraged our listeners to see that climate change isn't just an environmental crisis. It's a chance for innovation and positive change across every sector.
Absolutely. And remember, knowledge is power, so the more we understand about how interconnected our world really is, the better prepared we'll be for the future.
Couldn't agree more.
If you're interested in learning more about any of the topics we talked about today, be sure to check out the show notes for links to all of our sources. And until next time, keep those brains buzzing, and we'll catch you on the flip side.